Joshua Chapter 1. And it came about after the death of Moses the servant of Jehovah, that Jehovah proceeded to say to Joshua the son of Nun, the minister of Moses, Moses, my servant, is dead. And now get up, cross this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the sons of Israel. Every place upon which the sole of your foot will tread, to you people I shall certainly give it, just as I promised to Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon to the great river, the river Euphrates, that is, all the land of the Hittites, and to the great sea toward the setting of the sun, your territory will prove to be. Nobody will take a firm stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I proved to be with Moses, I shall prove to be with you. I shall neither desert you nor leave you entirely. Be courageous and strong, for you are the one who will cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their forefathers to give to them. Only be courageous and very strong, to take care to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn aside from it to the right or to the left, in order that you may act wisely everywhere you go. This book of the law should not depart from your mouth, and you must in an undertone read in it day and night, in order that you may take care to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way successful, and then you will act wisely. Have I not commanded you? Be courageous and strong. Do not suffer shock or be terrified, for Jehovah your God is with you wherever you go. And Joshua proceeded to command the officers of the people, saying, Pass through the midst of the camp, and command the people, saying, Get provisions ready for yourselves, because 3 days from now you are crossing this Jordan to go in and take possession of the land that Jehovah your God is giving you to take possession of it. And to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh Joshua said, Let there be a remembering of the word that Moses the servant of Jehovah commanded you, saying, Jehovah your God is giving you rest, and has given you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your livestock will dwell in the land that Moses has given you on this side of the Jordan. But you men will pass over in battle formation before your brothers, all the valiant mighty men, and you must help them. First, when Jehovah gives rest to your brothers the same as to you, and they also have taken possession of the land that Jehovah your God is giving them, you must also return to the land of your holding, and take possession of it, the one that Moses, the servant of Jehovah, has given you on the side of the Jordan, toward the rising of the sun. Accordingly they answered Joshua, saying, All that you have commanded us we shall do, and wherever you may send us we shall go. As we listened to Moses in everything, so we shall listen to you. Only may Jehovah your God prove to be with you, just as he proved to be with Moses. Any man that behaves rebelliously against your order, and does not listen to your words and all that you may command him, will be put to death. Only be courageous and strong. Chapter 2. Then Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men out secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, Go, take a look at the land and Jericho. So they went and came to the house of a prostitute woman whose name was Rahab, and they took up lodging there. In time it was said to the king of Jericho, "Look, men from the sons of Israel have come in here tonight to search out the land." At that the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men that came to you, that have come into your house, for it is to search out all the land that they have come." Meantime the woman took the 2 men and concealed them. And she proceeded to say, "Yes, the men did come to me, and I did not know from where they were. And it came about at the closing of the gate by dark that the men went out. I just do not know where the men have gone. Chase after them quickly, for you will overtake them." She, though, had taken them up to the roof, and she kept them out of sight among stalks of flax laid in rows for her upon the roof. And the men chased after them in the direction of the Jordan at the fords, and they shut the gate immediately after those chasing after them had gone out. As for these, before they could lie down, she herself came up to them on the roof. And she went on to say to the men, "I do know that Jehovah will certainly give you the land, and that the fright of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land have become disheartened because of you. For we have heard how Jehovah dried up the waters of the Red Sea from before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were on the other side of the Jordan, namely Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction. When we got to hear it, then our hearts began to melt, and no spirit has arisen yet in anybody because of you, for Jehovah your God is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. And now, please, swear to me by Jehovah that because I have exercised loving kindness toward you, you also will certainly exercise loving kindness toward the household of my father. And you must give me a trustworthy sign. And you must preserve alive my father, and my mother, and my brothers, and my sisters, and all who belong to them. And you must deliver our souls from death." At that the men said to her, "Our souls are to die instead of you people. If you will not tell about this matter of ours, it must also occur that when Jehovah gives us the land, we also shall certainly exercise loving kindness and trustworthiness toward you." After that, she had them descend by a rope through the window, for her house was on a side of the wall, and it was on the wall that she was dwelling. And she proceeded to say to them, "Go to the mountainous region, that those in pursuit may not come in contact with you, and you must keep hid there 3 days, until those in pursuit have come back, and afterward you may go in your own direction." In turn the men said to her, "We are free from guilt respecting this oath of yours that you have made us swear. Look, we are coming into the land. This cord of scarlet thread you should tie in the window, by which you have had us descend, and your father and your mother and your brothers, and all the household of your father, you should gather to yourself into the house. And it must occur that anyone who goes out of the doors of your house into the open, his blood will be upon his own head, and we shall be free from guilt. And everyone who continues with you in the house, his blood will be on our heads if a hand should come upon him. And if you should report this matter of ours, we shall also have become free from guilt respecting this oath of yours that you have made us swear." To this she said, "According to your words, so let it be." With that she sent them off, and they went their way. After that she tied the scarlet cord in the window. So they went and came to the mountainous region, and kept dwelling there 3 days, until the pursuers had come back. Now the pursuers were looking for them on every road, and they did not find them. And the two men proceeded to descend again from the mountainous region, and to cross over and come to Joshua the son of Nun. And they began to relate to him all the things that had happened to them. And they went on to say to Joshua, Jehovah has given all the land into our hand. Consequently, all the inhabitants of the land have also grown disheartened because of us. Chapter 3. Then Joshua got up early in the morning, and he and all the sons of Israel proceeded to pull away from Shittim, and to come as far as the Jordan, and they went spending the night there before they would cross. So it came about at the end of the 3 days, that the officers proceeded to pass through the midst of the camp, and to command the people, saying, As soon as you see the ark of the covenant of Jehovah your God, and the priests, the Levites, carrying it, then you yourselves will pull away from your place, and you must follow it. Only let there prove to be a distance between you and it of about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not get near to it, in order that you may know the way by which you should go, for you have not passed over on that way before. Joshua now said to the people, Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow Jehovah will do wonderful things in your midst. Then Joshua said to the priests, Take up the ark of the covenant, and pass before the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant, and went before the people. And Jehovah proceeded to say to Joshua, This day I shall start to make you great in the eyes of all Israel, that they may know that just as I proved to be with Moses, I shall prove to be with you. And you should command the priests carrying the ark of the covenant, saying, As soon as you have come as far as the edge of the waters of the Jordan, you should stand still in the Jordan. And Joshua went on to say to the sons of Israel, Approach here, and listen to the words of Jehovah your God. After that Joshua said, By this you will know that a living God is in your midst, and that he will without fail drive away from before you the Canaanites and the Hittites, and the Hivites and the Perizzites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites and the Jebusites. Look, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of the whole earth is passing before you into the Jordan. And now take for yourselves 12 men from the tribes of Israel, 1 man for each tribe. And it must occur that at the instant that the soles of the feet of the priests carrying the ark of Jehovah, the Lord of the whole earth, rest in the waters of the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan will be cut off, the waters descending from above, and they will stand still as one dam. And it came about that when the people pulled away from their tents just before passing over the Jordan, with the priests carrying the ark of the covenant before the people, and at the instant that the carriers of the ark came as far as the Jordan, and the feet of the priests carrying the ark were dipped in the edge of the waters, now the Jordan overflows all its banks all the days of harvest. Then the waters descending from above began to stand still. They rose up as one dam very far away at Adam, the city at the side of Zarethan, while those descending toward the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, were exhausted. They were cut off, and the people passed over in front of Jericho. Meanwhile the priests carrying the ark of Jehovah's covenant kept standing immovable on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan as all Israel were passing over on dry ground, until the whole nation had completed passing over the Jordan. Chapter 4. And it came about that as soon as the whole nation had completed passing over the Jordan, Jehovah proceeded to say to Joshua, Take for yourselves 12 men from the people, 1 man from each tribe, and command them, saying, Take up for yourselves from the very middle of the Jordan, from the place where the priests' feet stood motionless, 12 stones, and you must carry them over with you and deposit them in the lodging place in which you will lodge tonight." So Joshua called 12 men, whom he had appointed from the sons of Israel, 1 man from each tribe. And Joshua went on to say to them, "Pass ahead of the ark of Jehovah your God to the middle of the Jordan, and lift up for yourselves each one a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Israel, in order that this may serve as a sign in your midst. In case your sons should ask in time to come, saying, 'Why do you have these stones?' you must also say to them, 'Because the waters of the Jordan were cut off from before the ark of Jehovah's covenant. When it passed through the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones must serve as a memorial to the sons of Israel, to time indefinite.' Accordingly, the sons of Israel did so, just as Joshua had commanded, and they took up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, just as Jehovah had stated to Joshua, to correspond with the number of the tribes of the sons of Israel. And they went taking them over with them to the lodging place, and depositing them there. There were also 12 stones that Joshua set up in the middle of the Jordan, on the standing place of the feet of the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant, and they continue there until this day. And the priests carrying the ark were standing in the middle of the Jordan, until the whole matter had been completed that Jehovah had commanded Joshua to speak to the people, according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. All the while the people hurried up and passed over. And it came about that as soon as all the people had completed passing over, then the ark of Jehovah passed over, and the priests before the people. And the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh proceeded to pass over in battle formation in the sight of the sons of Israel, just as Moses had stated to them. About 40,000 equipped for the army passed over before Jehovah for the war onto the desert plains of Jericho. On that day Jehovah made Joshua great in the eyes of all Israel, and they began to fear him, just as they had feared Moses all the days of his life. Then Jehovah said to Joshua, "Command the priests carrying the ark of the testimony that they go up out of the Jordan." So Joshua commanded the priests, saying, "Go up out of the Jordan." And it came about that when the priests carrying the ark of the covenant of Jehovah came up out of the middle of the Jordan, and the soles of the feet of the priests were drawn out onto the dry ground, then the waters of the Jordan began returning to their place, and went overflowing all its banks as formerly. And the people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th of the first month, and took up camping at Gilgal, on the eastern border of Jericho. As for the 12 stones that they had taken out of the Jordan, Joshua set these up at Gilgal. And he went on to say to the sons of Israel, "When your sons ask their fathers in time to come, saying, 'What do these stones mean?' you must then let your sons know, saying, 'On the dry land it was that Israel passed over this Jordan, when Jehovah your God dried up the waters of the Jordan from before them until they had passed over, just as Jehovah your God had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up from before us until we had passed over, in order that all the peoples of the earth may know Jehovah's hand, that it is strong, in order that you may indeed fear Jehovah your God always." Chapter 5. And it came about that as soon as all the kings of the Amorites, who were on the side of the Jordan to the west, and all the kings of the Canaanites, who were by the sea, heard that Jehovah had dried up the waters of the Jordan from before the sons of Israel until they had passed over, then their hearts began to melt, and there proved to be no spiritedness in them any more because of the sons of Israel. At that particular time Jehovah said to Joshua, "Make for yourself flint knives, and circumcise the sons of Israel again, the second time." Accordingly Joshua made flint knives for himself, and circumcised the sons of Israel at Gibeath-haaraloth. And this was the reason why Joshua did the circumcising. All the people that came out of Egypt, the males, all the men of war, had died in the wilderness on the road when they were coming out of Egypt. For all the people who came out proved to be circumcised, but all the people born in the wilderness on the road when they were coming out of Egypt, they had not circumcised. For the sons of Israel had walked 40 years in the wilderness, until all the nation of the men of war who came out of Egypt, that did not listen to the voice of Jehovah, had come to its finish, to whom Jehovah swore that he would never let them see the land that Jehovah had sworn to their forefathers to give to us, a land flowing with milk and honey. And their sons he raised up instead of them. These Joshua circumcised, because they proved to be uncircumcised, for they had not circumcised them on the road. And it came about that when they had completed circumcising all the nation, they kept sitting in their place in the camp until they revived. Then Jehovah said to Joshua, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off you." So the name of that place came to be called Gilgal until this day. And the sons of Israel continued to camp in Gilgal, and they proceeded to carry out the Passover on the 14th day of the month, in the evening, on the desert plains of Jericho. And they began to eat some of the yield of the land the day after the Passover, unfermented cakes and roasted grains on this same day. Then the manna ceased on the following day when they had eaten some of the yield of the land, and manna did not occur any more for the sons of Israel, and they began to eat some of the produce of the land of Canaan in that year. And it came about when Joshua happened to be by Jericho, that he proceeded to raise his eyes and look, and there was a man standing in front of him with his drawn sword in his hand. So Joshua walked up to him and said to him, "Are you for us or for our adversaries?" To this he said, "No, but I, as prince of the army of Jehovah, have now come." With that Joshua fell on his face to the earth and prostrated himself and said to him, "What is my Lord saying to his servant?" In turn the prince of the army of Jehovah said to Joshua, "Draw your sandals from off your feet, because the place on which you are standing is holy." At once Joshua did so. Chapter 6. Now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the sons of Israel, no one going out and no one entering. And Jehovah went on to say to Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho and its king, the valiant mighty men, into your hand. And all you men of war must march round the city, going round the city once. That is the way you should do for 6 days. And 7 priests should carry 7 ram's horns before the ark, and on the 7th day you should march round the city 7 times, and the priests should blow the horns. And it must occur that when they sound with the horn of the ram, when you hear the sound of the horn, all the people should shout a great war cry, and the wall of the city must fall down flat, and the people must go up, each one straight before him." Accordingly Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant, and 7 priests should carry 7 ram's horns before the ark of Jehovah." And he went on to say to the people, "Pass on and march round the city, and the war-equipped force should pass on ahead of the ark of Jehovah." So it came about, just as Joshua said to the people. And 7 priests, carrying 7 ram's horns before Jehovah, passed on, and blew the horns, and the ark of the covenant of Jehovah was following them. And the war-equipped force was going ahead of the priests, blowing the horns, while the rear guard was following the ark with a continual blowing on the horns. Now Joshua had commanded the people, saying, "You must neither shout nor let your voices be heard, and no word should come out of your mouths, until the day when I say to you, 'Shout!' Then you must shout." And he had the ark of Jehovah go marching round the city, going round once, after which they went to the camp and stayed overnight in the camp. Then Joshua got up early in the morning, and the priests went carrying the ark of Jehovah. And 7 priests carrying 7 ram's horns before the ark of Jehovah were walking, continually blowing the horns, and the war-equipped force was walking ahead of them, while the rear guard was following the ark of Jehovah with a continual blowing on the horns. And they went marching round the city on the 2nd day once, after which they returned to the camp. That was the way they did for 6 days. And it came about on the 7th day that they proceeded to get up early, as soon as the dawn ascended, and they went marching round the city in this manner 7 times. Just on that day they marched round the city 7 times. And it came about on the 7th time that the priests blew the horns, and Joshua proceeded to say to the people, "Shout, for Jehovah has given you the city. And the city must become a thing devoted to destruction. It with everything that is in it belongs to Jehovah. Only Rahab the prostitute may keep on living, she and all who are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers whom we sent out. As for you people, only keep away from the thing devoted to destruction, for fear you may get a desire, and you do take some of the thing devoted to destruction, and do constitute the camp of Israel a thing devoted to destruction, and bring ostracism upon it. But all the silver and the gold and the articles of copper and iron are something holy to Jehovah. Into the treasure of Jehovah it should go." Then the people shouted when they proceeded to blow the horns. And it came about that as soon as the people heard the sound of the horn, and the people began to shout a great war cry, then the wall began to fall down flat. After that the people went up into the city, each one straight before him, and captured the city. And they went devoting all that was in the city, from man to woman, from young man to old man, and to bull and sheep and ass, to destruction by the edge of the sword. And to the 2 men who had done the spying on the land, Joshua said, "Go into the house of the woman, the prostitute, and bring out of there the woman and all who belong to her, just as you have sworn to her." So the young men who had done the spying went in and brought out Rahab, and her father and her mother, and her brothers and all who belonged to her. Yes, all her family relationship they brought out, and they proceeded to set them down outside the camp of Israel. And they burned the city with fire, and everything that was in it. Only the silver and the gold and the articles of copper and iron they gave to the treasure of Jehovah's house. And Rahab the prostitute and the household of her father and all who belonged to her, Joshua preserved alive. And she dwells in the midst of Israel down to this day, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent out to spy on Jericho. Then Joshua had an oath pronounced at that particular time, saying, "Cursed may the man be before Jehovah who gets up and does build this city, even Jericho. At the forfeit of his firstborn, let him lay the foundation of it, and at the forfeit of his youngest, let him put up its doors." So Jehovah proved to be with Joshua, and his fame came to be in all the earth. Chapter 7. And the sons of Israel went committing an act of unfaithfulness respecting the thing devoted to destruction, in that Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, took some of the thing devoted to destruction. At this Jehovah's anger grew hot against the sons of Israel. Then Joshua sent men out from Jericho to Ai, which is close by Bethaven, to the east of Bethel, and said to them, Go up and spy on the land. Accordingly the men went up and spied on Ai. After that they returned to Joshua and said to him, Let not all the people go up. Let about 2,000 men, or about 3,000 men go up and strike Ai. Do not weary all the people with going there, for they are few. So about 3,000 men of the people went up there. But they took to flight before the men of Ai. And the men of Ai got to strike down about 36 men of them. And they went pursuing them from before the gate as far as Shebarim, and continued striking them down on the descent. Consequently, the heart of the people began to melt, and became as water. At this Joshua ripped his mantles and fell upon his face to the earth before the ark of Jehovah until the evening, he and the older men of Israel, and they kept putting dust upon their heads. And Joshua went on to say, Alas, sovereign Lord Jehovah, why did you bring this people all the way across the Jordan, just to give us into the hand of the Amorites for them to destroy us? And if only we had taken it upon ourselves and continued dwelling on the other side of the Jordan. Excuse me, O Jehovah, but what can I say after Israel has turned his back before his enemies? And the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear of it, and they will certainly surround us and cut our name off from the earth. And what will you do for your great name? In turn, Jehovah said to Joshua, Get up, you! Why is it that you are falling upon your face? Israel has sinned, and they have also overstepped my covenant that I laid as a command upon them. And they have also taken some of the thing devoted to destruction, and have also stolen, and also kept it secret, and have also put it among their own articles. And the sons of Israel will not be able to rise up against their enemies. The back is what they will turn before their enemies, because they have become a thing devoted to destruction. I shall not prove to be with you again unless you annihilate the thing devoted to destruction out of your midst. Get up, sanctify the people, and you must say, Sanctify yourselves tomorrow, for this is what Jehovah the God of Israel has said. A thing devoted to destruction is in your midst, O Israel. You will not be able to rise up against your enemies until you people have removed the thing devoted to destruction from your midst. And you must present yourselves in the morning, tribe by tribe. And it must occur that the tribe that Jehovah will pick will come near, family by family, and the family that Jehovah will pick will come near, household by household, and the household that Jehovah will pick will come near, able-bodied man by able-bodied man. And it must occur that the one picked with the thing devoted to destruction will be burned with fire, he and all that belongs to him, because he has overstepped the covenant of Jehovah, and because he has committed a disgraceful folly in Israel. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and had Israel come near, tribe by tribe of it, and the tribe of Judah got to be picked. Next he had the families of Judah come near, and picked the family of the Zerahites, after which he had the family of the Zerahites come near, able-bodied man by able-bodied man, and Zabdi got to be picked. Finally he had his household come near, able-bodied man by able-bodied man, and Achan the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah of the tribe of Judah, got to be picked. Then Joshua said to Achan, My son, Render, please, glory to Jehovah the God of Israel, and make confession to him, and tell me, please, what have you done? Do not hide it from me. At this Achan answered Joshua and said, For a fact I have sinned against Jehovah the God of Israel, and this way and that way I have done. When I got to see among the spoil an official garment from Shinar, a good-looking one, and 200 shekels of silver, and 1 gold bar, 50 shekels being its weight, then I wanted them, and I took them. And look, they are hidden in the earth in the midst of my tent, with the money underneath it. At once Joshua sent messengers, and they went running to the tent, and look, it was hidden in his tent with the money underneath it. So they took them from the midst of the tent, and brought them to Joshua and all the sons of Israel, and poured them out before Jehovah. Joshua and all Israel with him now took Achan the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the official garment, and the bar of gold, and his sons, and his daughters, and his bull, and his ass, and his flock, and his tent, and everything that was his, and they brought them up to the low plain of Achor. Then Joshua said, Why have you brought ostracism upon us? Jehovah will bring ostracism upon you on this day. With that all Israel went pelting him with stones, after which they burned them with fire. Thus they stoned them with stones. And they proceeded to raise up over him a big pile of stones, down to this day. At this Jehovah turned away from his hot anger. That is why the name of that place has been called Low Plain of Achor, down to this day. Chapter 8. Then Jehovah said to Joshua, Do not be afraid or be terrified. Take with you all the people of war, and get up, go up to Ai. See, I have given into your hand the king of Ai, and his people, and his city, and his land. And you must do to Ai and to its king, just as you did to Jericho and its king. Only you people may plunder its spoil and its domestic animals for yourselves. Set an ambush of yours against the city at its rear. Accordingly Joshua and all the people of war rose to go up to Ai. And Joshua proceeded to choose 30,000 men, valiant mighty ones, and to send them off by night. And he went on to command them, saying, See, you are lying in ambush against the city to the rear of the city. Do not go very far away from the city, and you must all of you hold yourselves in readiness. As for me, and all the people who are with me, we shall go close to the city, and it must occur that in case they should come out to meet us just as at the first, we must then flee before them. And they must come out after us until we have drawn them away from the city, for they will say, They are fleeing before us just as at the first, and we must flee before them. Then you will rise up from the ambush, and you must take possession of the city, and Jehovah your God will certainly give it into your hands. And it must occur that as soon as you have seized the city, you should set the city on fire. According to Jehovah's word you should do. See, I have commanded you. After that Joshua sent them out, and they marched to the place of ambush, and took up quarters between Bethel and Ai, to the west of Ai, while Joshua kept lodging on that night in the midst of the people. Then Joshua rose up early in the morning, and reviewed the people, and went up, he and the older men of Israel, before the people to Ai. And all the people of war who were with him went up, that they might approach and get in front of the city. And they proceeded to camp to the north of Ai, with the valley between them and Ai. In the meantime, he took about 5,000 men and set them as an ambush between Bethel and Ai to the west of the city. So the people set the main camp that was to the north of the city, and the extreme rear of it that was to the west of the city, and Joshua proceeded to go during that night into the middle of the low plain. And it came about that, as soon as the king of Ai saw it, then the men of the city got in a hurry, and rose up early, and went out to meet Israel in battle, he and all his people, at the appointed time, before the desert plain. As for him, he did not know that there was an ambush against him to the rear of the city. When Joshua and all Israel suffered a blow before them, then they took to flight by the way of the wilderness. At that all the people who were in the city were called out to chase after them, and they went chasing after Joshua, and got to be drawn away from the city. And there was not a man remaining in Ai and Bethel that did not go out after Israel, so that they left the city wide open, and went chasing after Israel. Jehovah now said to Joshua, "Stretch out the javelin that is in your hand toward Ai, for into your hand I shall give it." Accordingly Joshua stretched out the javelin that was in his hand toward the city. And the ambush rose up quickly from its place, and they began to run at the instant that he stretched out his hand, and they proceeded to enter the city and capture it. Then they hurried and set the city on fire. And the men of Ai began to turn back and look, and there the smoke of the city ascended to the heavens, and there proved to be no ability in them to flee this way or that. And the people that were fleeing to the wilderness turned upon the pursuers. And Joshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had captured the city, and that the smoke of the city ascended, and so they turned around and went striking the men of Ai down. And these others came out of the city to meet them, so that they got to be in between Israel, these on this side and those on that. And they went striking them down, until there did not remain of them either a survivor or an escapee. And the king of Ai they caught alive, and proceeded to bring him near to Joshua. And it came about that while Israel was finishing the killing of all the inhabitants of Ai in the field, in the wilderness in which they had pursued them, they kept falling, all of them, by the edge of the sword, until they came to their end. After that all Israel returned to Ai, and struck it with the edge of the sword. And all those who fell on that day, from man to woman, amounted to 12,000, all the people of Ai. And Joshua did not draw back his hand, with which he stretched out the javelin, until he had devoted all the inhabitants of Ai to destruction. Only the domestic animals and the spoil of that city Israel plundered for themselves, according to Jehovah's word that he had laid in command upon Joshua. Then Joshua burned Ai, and reduced it to an indefinitely lasting mound, as a desolation down to this day. And he hanged the king of Ai upon a stake until the evening time. And as the sun was about to set, Joshua gave the command, and then they took his dead body down from the stake, and pitched it at the entrance of the gate of the city, and raised up a great pile of stones over him, down to this day. It was then that Joshua proceeded to build an altar to Jehovah, the God of Israel, in Mount Ebal, just as Moses, the servant of Jehovah, had commanded the sons of Israel, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of whole stones, upon which no iron tool has been wielded. And they went offering up burnt offerings upon it to Jehovah, and sacrificing communion sacrifices. Then he wrote there upon the stones a copy of the law of Moses that he had written before the sons of Israel. And all Israel and their older men and the officers and their judges were standing on this side and on that side of the ark in front of the priests, the Levites, carrying the ark of the covenant of Jehovah, the alien resident as well as the native, one half of them in front of Mount Gerizim, and the other half of them in front of Mount Ebal, just as Moses the servant of Jehovah had commanded, to bless the people of Israel first of all. And after this he read aloud all the words of the law, the blessing and the malediction, according to all that is written in the book of the law. There proved to be not a word of all that Moses had commanded that Joshua did not read aloud in front of all the congregation of Israel, together with the women and the little ones and the alien residents who walked in their midst. Chapter 9. And it came about that as soon as all the kings who were on the side of the Jordan in the mountainous region, and in the Shephelah, and along the whole coast of the Great Sea, and in front of Lebanon, the Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites heard of it, they began to assemble themselves all together to make war against Joshua and Israel unanimously. And the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai. So they, even of their own accord, acted with shrewdness, and went and stocked themselves with provisions, and took worn-out sacks for their asses, and wineskin bottles worn out and burst and tied up, and worn out and patched sandals on their feet, and worn out garments upon themselves, and all the bread of their provisions proved to be dry and crummy. Then they went to Joshua at the camp at Gilgal, and said to him and the men of Israel, It is from a distant land that we have come, and now conclude a covenant with us. At this the men of Israel said to the Hivites, Perhaps it is in our vicinity that you are dwelling. So how could we conclude a covenant with you? In turn they said to Joshua, We are your servants. Then Joshua said to them, Who are you, and where do you come from? At this they said to him, It is from a very distant land that your servants have come in regard to the name of Jehovah your God, because we have heard of his fame, and of all that he did in Egypt, and of all that he did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were on the other side of the Jordan, namely Sihon the king of Heshbon, and Og the king of Bashan, who was in Ashtaroth. Hence our older men and all the inhabitants of our land said this to us, Take provisions in your hands for the journey, and go to meet them, and you must say to them, We are your servants, and now conclude a covenant with us. This bread of ours, it was hot when we took it as our provisions out of our houses on the day of our going out to come here to you, and now look, it is dry and has become crummy. And these are the wineskin bottles that we filled new, and look, they have burst. And these garments and sandals of ours, they have worn out because of the great length of the journey. Upon that the men took some of their provisions, and at the mouth of Jehovah they did not inquire. And Joshua went making peace with them, and concluding a covenant with them, to let them live. And so the chieftains of the assembly swore to them. And it came about that at the end of 3 days, after they had concluded a covenant with them, they got to hear that they were near to them, and it was in their vicinity they were dwelling. Then the sons of Israel pulled out and came to their cities on the 3rd day. And their cities were Gibeon, and Kephirah, and Beeroth, and Kiriath-Jearim. And the sons of Israel did not strike them, because the chieftains of the assembly had sworn to them by Jehovah the God of Israel. And all the assembly began to murmur against the chieftains. At this all the chieftains said to all the assembly, We for our part have sworn to them by Jehovah the God of Israel, and now we are not allowed to hurt them. This is what we shall do to them while letting them live, that no indignation may come upon us over the oath that we have sworn to them. So the chieftains said to them, Let them live, and let them become gatherers of wood, and drawers of water for all the assembly, just as the chieftains have promised them. Joshua now called them and spoke to them, saying, Why did you trick us, saying, We are very far away from you, whereas you are dwelling in our very midst? And now you are a cursed people, and a slave's position in being gatherers of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God will never be cut off from you. Then they answered Joshua and said, It was because your servants were plainly told that Jehovah your God had commanded Moses his servant to give you all the land, and to annihilate all the inhabitants of the land from before you. And we became very much afraid for our souls because of you. So we did this thing, and now here we are in your hand. Just as it is good and right in your eyes to do to us, do. And he proceeded to do so to them, and to deliver them from the hand of the sons of Israel, and they did not kill them. Accordingly Joshua constituted them on that day gatherers of wood and drawers of water for the assembly and for Jehovah's altar, down to this day, at the place that he should choose. Chapter 10. And it came about that as soon as Adoni-Zedek, the king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had captured Ai, and then devoted it to destruction, that just as he had done to Jericho and its king, so he had done to Ai and its king, and that the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were continuing in their midst, he became very much afraid, because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all its men were mighty ones. Consequently, Adoni-Zedek, the king of Jerusalem, sent to Hoham, the king of Hebron, and to Piram, the king of Jarmuth, and to Japhiah, the king of Lachish, and to Deber, the king of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, and let us strike Gibeon, because it has made peace with Joshua and the sons of Israel. At this they gathered together and went on up, 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, these and all their camps, and they proceeded to camp against Gibeon and to war against it. Upon that the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp at Gilgal, saying, Do not let your hand relax from your slaves. Come up to us quickly, and do save us and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites inhabiting the mountainous region have collected together against us. So Joshua went on up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the valiant mighty men. Then Jehovah said to Joshua, Do not be afraid of them, for into your hand I have given them. Not a man of them will stand against you. And Joshua proceeded to come against them by surprise. All night long he had gone up from Gilgal. And Jehovah went throwing them into confusion before Israel, and they began to slay them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and went pursuing them by way of the ascent of Beth-horon, and slaying them as far as Azekah and Makkedah. And it came about that while they were fleeing from before Israel, and were on the descent of Beth-horon, Jehovah hurled great stones from the heavens upon them, as far as Azekah, so that they died. There were more who died from the hailstones than those whom the sons of Israel killed with the sword. It was then that Joshua proceeded to speak to Jehovah on the day of Jehovah's abandoning the Amorites to the sons of Israel. And he went on to say before the eyes of Israel, Sun, be motionless over Gibeon, and moon over the low plain of Aijalon. Accordingly the sun kept motionless, and the moon did stand still, until the nation could take vengeance on its enemies. Is it not written in the book of Jashar? And the sun kept standing still in the middle of the heavens, and did not hasten to set for about a whole day. and no day has proved to be like that one, either before it or after it, in that Jehovah listened to the voice of a man, for Jehovah himself was fighting for Israel. After that Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal. Meantime these 5 kings fled, and went hiding themselves in the cave at Makkedah. Then the report was made to Joshua, saying, "The 5 kings have been found hidden in the cave at Makkedah." At that Joshua said, "Roll great stones up to the mouth of the cave, and assign men over it to guard them. As for you men, do not stand still. Chase after your enemies, and you must strike them in the rear. Do not allow them to enter into their cities, for Jehovah your God has given them into your hands." And it came about that as soon as Joshua and the sons of Israel had finished slaying them with a very great slaughter, until these came to their end, and those who did survive of them escaped and went entering into the fortified cities, all the people then began to return to the camp to Joshua at Makkedah in peace. Not a man moved his tongue eagerly against the sons of Israel. Then Joshua said, "Open the mouth of the cave and bring out these 5 kings from the cave to me." At that they did so, and brought out to him from the cave these 5 kings, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon. And it came about that as soon as they had brought out these kings to Joshua, Joshua proceeded to call all the men of Israel, and to say to the commanders of the men of war that had gone with him, "Come forward, place your feet on the back of the necks of these kings." So they came forward and placed their feet on the back of their necks. And Joshua went on to say to them, "Do not be afraid or be terrified. Be courageous and strong, for it is like this that Jehovah will do to all your enemies against whom you are warring." And after that Joshua proceeded to strike them, and put them to death, and hang them upon 5 stakes, and they continued hanging upon the stakes until the evening. And it came about that at the time of the setting of the sun, Joshua commanded, and they went taking them down off the stakes, and throwing them into the cave where they had hid themselves. Then they placed big stones at the mouth of the cave until this very day. And Joshua captured Makkedah on that day, and went striking it with the edge of the sword. As for its king, he devoted him and every soul that was in it to destruction. He let no survivor remain. So he did to the king of Makkedah, just as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Makkedah to Libnah, and warred against Libnah. Accordingly Jehovah gave it also and its king into Israel's hand, and they went striking it, and every soul that was in it with the edge of the sword. They did not let a survivor remain in it. So they did to its king, just as they had done to the king of Jericho. Next Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Libnah to Lachish, and went camping against it, and warring upon it. Accordingly Jehovah gave Lachish into Israel's hand, so that they captured it on the 2nd day, and they went striking it, and every soul that was in it with the edge of the sword, according to all that they had done to Libnah. It was then that Horam the king of Gezer went up to help Lachish. So Joshua struck him and his people, until he had let not a survivor of his remain. Then Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Lachish to Eglon, and went camping against it and warring against it. And they got to capture it on that day, and began to smite it with the edge of the sword, and they devoted every soul that was in it to destruction on that day, according to all that they had done to Lachish. Then Joshua and all Israel with him went up from Eglon to Hebron, and began to war against it. And they got to capture it, and went striking it and its king and all its towns, and every soul that was in it with the edge of the sword. he did not let a survivor remain, according to all that he had done to Eglon. So he devoted it, and every soul that was in it, to destruction. Finally Joshua and all Israel with him came back to Debir and began to war against it. And he got to capture it and its king and all its towns. And they went striking them with the edge of the sword, and devoting every soul that was in it to destruction. He did not let a survivor remain. Just as he had done to Hebron, so he did to Debir and its king, and just as he had done to Libnah and its king. And Joshua proceeded to strike all the land of the mountainous region, and the Negeb, and the Shephelah, and the slopes, and all their kings. He did not let a survivor remain, and everything that breathed he devoted to destruction, just as Jehovah the God of Israel had commanded. And Joshua went striking them from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, and all the land of Goshen, and up to Gibeon. And Joshua captured all these kings in their land at one time, because it was Jehovah the God of Israel who was fighting for Israel. After that Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal. Chapter 11. And it came about that as soon as Jabin, the king of Hazor, heard of it, he went sending to Jobab, the king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, and the king of Akshaph, and to the kings that were to the north in the mountainous region, and in the desert plains south of Kinnereth, and in the Shephelah, and on the mountain ridges of Dor to the west, the Canaanites to the east and the west, and the Amorites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Jebusites in the mountainous region, and the Hivites at the base of Hermon in the land of Mizpah. So they went out, they and all their camps with them, a people as numerous as the grains of sand that are on the seashore for multitude, and very many horses and war chariots. Then all these kings met together by appointment, and came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. At this Jehovah said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid because of them, for tomorrow about this time I am abandoning all of them slain to Israel. Their horses you will hamstring, and their chariots you will burn in the fire." And Joshua and all the people of war with him proceeded to come against them along the waters of Merom by surprise, and to fall upon them. Then Jehovah gave them into Israel's hand, and they went striking them and pursuing them as far as populous Sidon, and Misrephoth-Maim, and the valley plain of Mizpah to the east, and they kept striking them until they had not let a survivor of theirs remain. After that Joshua did to them just as Jehovah had said to him. Their horses he hamstrung, and their chariots he burned in the fire. More than that, Joshua turned about at that time and captured Hazor, and its king he struck down with the sword, because Hazor was before that the head of all these kingdoms. And they went striking every soul that was in it with the edge of the sword, devoting them to destruction. No breathing thing at all was left over, and he burned Hazor in the fire. And all the cities of these kings and all their kings Joshua captured, and went striking them with the edge of the sword. He devoted them to destruction, just as Moses the servant of Jehovah had commanded. It was only all the cities standing on their own mounds that Israel did not burn, except that Joshua did burn Hazor by itself. And all the spoil of these cities and the domestic animals the sons of Israel plundered for themselves. It was only all humankind that they struck with the edge of the sword until they had annihilated them. They did not let any one that breathed remain. Just as Jehovah had commanded Moses his servant, so Moses commanded Joshua, and so Joshua did. He did not remove a word from all that Jehovah had commanded Moses. And Joshua proceeded to take all this land, the mountainous region and all the Negeb, and all the land of Goshen, and the Shephelah, and the Arabah, and the mountainous region of Israel, and its Shephelah, from Mount Halak, which goes up to Seir, and as far as Baal-gad, in the valley plain of Lebanon, at the base of Mount Hermon. And he captured all their kings, and went striking them, and putting them to death. Many days it was that Joshua waged war with all these kings. There proved to be no city that made peace with the sons of Israel, but the Hivites inhabiting Gibeon. All the others they took by war. For it proved to be Jehovah's course to let their hearts become stubborn, so as to declare war against Israel, in order that he might devote them to destruction, that they might come to have no favorable consideration, but in order that he might annihilate them, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Furthermore, at that particular time Joshua went and cut off the Anakim from the mountainous region, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from all the mountainous region of Judah, and from all the mountainous region of Israel. Along with their cities Joshua devoted them to destruction. No Anakim were left in the land of the sons of Israel. It was only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod that they remained. So Joshua took all the land according to all that Jehovah had promised Moses, and Joshua then gave it as an inheritance to Israel by their shares, according to their tribes. And the land had no disturbance from war. Chapter 12. Now these are the kings of the land whom the sons of Israel defeated, and whose land they then took possession of on the side of the Jordan toward the rising of the sun, from the torrent valley of Arnon up to Mount Hermon, and all the Arabah toward the sunrise. Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, ruling from Aroer, which was on the bank of the torrent valley of Arnon, and the middle of the torrent valley, and half of Gilead as far as Jabbok, the torrent valley, the boundary of the sons of Ammon, and the Arabah as far as the sea of Kinnereth toward the east, and as far as the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, to the east in the direction of Beth-Jeshemoth, and toward the south under the slopes of Pisgah, and the territory of Og the king of Bashan, of what was left over of the Rephaim, who dwelt in Ashtaroth and Edrei, and who ruled in Mount Hermon, and in Salecah, and in all Bashan, as far as the boundary of the Geshurites, and the Maacathites, and half of Gilead, to the territory of Sihon, the king of Heshbon. It was Moses the servant of Jehovah, and the sons of Israel, who defeated them, after which Moses the servant of Jehovah gave it as a holding to the Reubenites, and the Gadites, and half of the tribe of Manasseh. And these are the kings of the land whom Joshua and the sons of Israel defeated, on the side of the Jordan toward the west, from Baal-gad in the valley plain of Lebanon, and as far as Mount Halak, which goes up to Seir, after which Joshua gave it to the tribes of Israel as a holding by their shares, in the mountainous region, and in the Shephelah, and in the Arabah, and on the slopes, and in the wilderness, and in the Negeb, the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The king of Jericho, 1. The king of Ai, which was beside Bethel, 1. The king of Jerusalem, 1. The king of Hebron, 1. The king of Jarmuth, 1. The king of Lachish, 1. The king of Eglon, 1. The king of Gezer, 1. The king of Debir, 1. The king of Geder, 1. The king of Hormah, 1. The king of Arad, 1. The king of Libnah, 1. The king of Adullam, 1. The king of Makkedah, 1. The king of Bethel, 1. The king of Tappuah, 1. The king of Hepher, 1. The king of Aphek, 1. The king of Lasharon, 1. The king of Madon, 1. The king of Hazor, 1. The king of Shimron-Meron, 1. The king of Akshaph, 1. The king of Taanach, 1. The king of Megiddo, 1. The king of Kedesh, 1. The king of Jokneam in Carmel, 1. The king of Dor on the mountain ridge of Dor, 1. The king of Goyim in Gilgal, 1. The king of Tirzah, 1. All the kings being 31. Chapter 13. Now Joshua was old, being advanced in years. So Jehovah said to him, You yourself have grown old, and have advanced in years, and to a very great extent the land yet remains to be taken in possession. This is the land yet remaining, all the regions of the Philistines, and all the Geshurites, from the branch of the Nile that is in front of Egypt, and up to the border of Ekron to the north. It used to be reckoned as belonging to the Canaanites. 5 Axis lords of the Philistines, the Gazites, and the Ashdodites, the Ashkelonites, the Gittites, and the Ekronites, and the Avim. To the south all the land of the Canaanites, and Meara, which belongs to the Sidonians, as far as Aphek, as far as the border of the Amorites, and the land of the Gebalites, and all of Lebanon toward the rising of the sun, from Baal-Gad at the base of Mount Hermon, as far as to the entering in of Hamath, all the inhabitants of the mountainous region from Lebanon to Mizraphoth-Maim, all the Sidonians, I myself shall dispossess them from before the sons of Israel. Only make it fall to Israel as an inheritance, just as I have commanded you. And now apportion this land as an inheritance to the 9 tribes, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. With the other half-tribe, the Reubenites and the Gadites took their inheritance that Moses gave them on the side of the Jordan toward the east, just as Moses the servant of Jehovah had given them, from Aroer, which is on the bank of the torrent valley of Arnon, and the city that is in the middle of the torrent valley, and all the tableland of Medeba, as far as Dibon, and all the cities of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, up to the border of the sons of Ammon, and Gilead, and the territory of the Geshurites, and the Maacathites, and all of Mount Hermon, and all Bashan, as far as Salekah, all the royal realm of Og in Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei. He it was who remained of what was left of the Rephaim. And Moses went striking them and dispossessing them. And the sons of Israel did not dispossess the Geshurites and the Maacathites, but Geshur and Maacath kept dwelling in the midst of Israel down to this day. It was only to the tribe of the Levites that he did not give an inheritance. The offerings made by fire of Jehovah the God of Israel are their inheritance, just as he has promised them. Then Moses made a gift to the tribe of the sons of Reuben by their families, and the territory came to be theirs from Aroer, which is on the bank of the torrent valley of Arnon, and the city that is in the middle of the torrent valley, and all the tableland by Medeba, Heshbon and all its towns that are on the tableland, Dibon, and Bamoth Baal, and Beth-Baalmeon, and Jahaz, and Kedemoth, and Mephaath, and Kiriathaim, and Sibmah, and Zereth-Shahar, in the mountain of the low plain, and Beth-Peor, and the slopes of Pisgah, and Beth-Jeshimoth, and all the cities of the tableland, and all the royal realm of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, and whom Moses struck, together with the chieftains of Midian, Evi, and Rechem, and Zur, and Hur, and Reba, the dukes of Sihon, who were dwelling in the land. And Balaam, the son of Beor, the diviner, was one whom the sons of Israel killed with the sword, along with their slain ones. And the boundary of the sons of Reuben came to be the Jordan, and this as a territory was the inheritance of the sons of Reuben by their families, with the cities and their settlements. Furthermore, Moses made a gift to the tribe of Gad, the sons of Gad by their families, and their territory came to be Jazer, and all the cities of Gilead, and half of the land of the sons of Ammon as far as Aroer, which is in front of Rabbah, and from Heshbon to Ramath-Mizpah and Betanim, and from Mahanaim to the border of Debir, and in the low plain Beth-haram, and Beth-nimrah, and Succoth, and Zaphon, the rest of the royal realm of Sihon, the king of Heshbon, the Jordan being the border as far as the extremity of the Sea of Kinnereth, on the side of Jordan toward the east. This was the inheritance of the sons of Gad by their families, with the cities and their settlements. Further, Moses made a gift to the half-tribe of Manasseh, and it came to be that of the half-tribe of the sons of Manasseh by their families. And their territory came to be from Mahanaim all of Bashan, all the royal realm of Og, the king of Bashan, and all the tent villages of Jair that are in Bashan, 60 towns, and half of Gilead, and Ashtaroth, and Edrei, the cities of the royal realm of Og in Bashan, went to the sons of Machir, the son of Manasseh, to half of the sons of Machir by their families. These were what Moses caused them to inherit on the desert plains of Moab on the side of the Jordan, at Jericho toward the east. And to the tribe of the Levites Moses did not give an inheritance. Jehovah the God of Israel is their inheritance, just as he has promised them. Chapter 14. Now this is what the sons of Israel took as a hereditary possession in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the sons of Israel caused them to inherit. Their inheritance was by lot, just as Jehovah had commanded by means of Moses for the 9 tribes and the half-tribe. For Moses had given the inheritance of the 2 other tribes and the other half-tribe on the other side of the Jordan, and to the Levites he did not give an inheritance in their midst. For the sons of Joseph had become 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, and they had not given a share in the land to the Levites, except cities to dwell in, and their pasture grounds for their livestock and their property. Just as Jehovah had commanded Moses, so the sons of Israel did, and they proceeded to apportion the land. Then the sons of Judah approached Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, said to him, You yourself well know the word that Jehovah spoke to Moses, the man of the true God, with regard to me and with regard to you at Kadesh Barnea. 40 years old I was when Moses, the servant of Jehovah, sent me out of Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I came bringing him back word just as it was in my heart. And my brothers who went up with me caused the heart of the people to melt. But as for me, I followed Jehovah my God fully. Consequently, Moses swore on that day, saying, The land upon which your foot has trod will become yours and your sons as an inheritance to time indefinite, because you have followed Jehovah my God fully. And now here Jehovah has preserved me alive, just as he promised, these 45 years since Jehovah made this promise to Moses when Israel walked in the wilderness, and now here I am today, 85 years old. Yet I am today as strong as on the day of Moses sending me out. As my power was then, so my power is now for the war, both to go out and to come in. And now do give me this mountainous region that Jehovah promised on that day. For you yourself heard on that day that there were Anakim there, and great fortified cities. Likely Jehovah will be with me, and I shall certainly dispossess them, just as Jehovah promised. At that Joshua blessed him, and gave Hebron to Caleb the son of Jephunneh as an inheritance. That is why Hebron has come to belong to Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite as an inheritance down to this day, for the reason that he followed Jehovah the God of Israel fully. The name of Hebron before that was Kiriath-Arba. Said Arba was the great man among the Anakim, and the land had no disturbance from war. Chapter 15. And the lot of the tribe of the sons of Judah by their families came to be to the boundary of Edom, the wilderness of Zin, to the Negeb at its southern end. And their southern boundary came to be from the extremity of the salt sea, from the bay that faces southward. And it went out southward to the ascent of Akrabim, and passed over to Zin, and went up from the south to Kadesh Barnea, and passed over to Hezron, and went up to Adar, and went around to Karka. And it passed on to Asmon, and went out to the torrent valley of Egypt, and the boundary's termination proved to be at the sea. This came to be their southern boundary. And the eastern boundary was the salt sea up to the end of the Jordan, and the boundary at the northern corner was at the bay of the sea, at the end of the Jordan. And the boundary went up to Beth-Hoglah, and passed over at the north of Beth-Araba, and the boundary went up to the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuben. And the boundary went up to Debir at the low plain of Achor, and turning northward to Gilgal, which is in front of the ascent of Adummim, which is south of the torrent valley. And the boundary passed over to the waters of En-Shemesh, and its termination proved to be En-Rogel. And the boundary went up to the valley of the son of Hinnom, to the slope of the Jebusite at the south, that is to say, Jerusalem. And the boundary went up to the top of the mountain that faces the valley of Hinnom to the west, which is at the extremity of the low plain of Rephaim to the north. And the boundary was marked out from the top of the mountain to the spring of the waters of Nephtoah, and went out to the cities of Mount Ephraim. And the boundary was marked out to Baalah, that is to say, Kiriath-Jearim. And the boundary went around from Baalah westward to Mount Seir, and passed over to the slope of Mount Jearim at the north, that is to say, Kesalon. And it went down to Beth-Shemesh, and passed over to Timnah. And the boundary went out to the slope of Ekron to the north, and the boundary was marked out to Shikkeron, and passed over to Mount Baalah, and went out to Jabneel, and the boundary's termination proved to be at the sea. And the western boundary was at the great sea and its shoreland. This was the boundary all around of the sons of Judah by their families. And to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, he gave a share in the midst of the sons of Judah at the order of Jehovah to Joshua, namely, Kiriath-Arba, said Arba being the father of Anak, that is to say, Hebron. So Caleb drove away from there the 3 sons of Anak, namely, Sheshai, and Ahiman, and Talmai, those born of Anak. Then he went up from there to the inhabitants of Debir. Now the name of Debir before that was Kiriath-Sepher. And Caleb proceeded to say, Whoever strikes Kiriath-Sepher and does capture it, I shall certainly give him Achsah, my daughter, as a wife. At that Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's brother, captured it. Accordingly he gave him Achsah, his daughter, as a wife. And it came about that when she was going home, she kept inciting him to ask a field from her father. Then she clapped her hands while upon the ass. At this Caleb said to her, What do you want? So she said, Do give me a blessing, for it is a piece of land to the south you have given me, and you must give me Galath-Maim. Accordingly he gave her Upper Galath and Lower Galath. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the sons of Judah by their families. And the cities at the extremity of the tribe of the sons of Judah toward the boundary of Edom in the south came to be Kabzeel, and Eder, and Jagur. and Kinah, and Dimona, and Adada, and Kedesh, and Hazor, and Ithnan, Ziph, and Telem, and Bealoth, and Hazor Hadattah, and Kiriath Hezron, that is to say, Hazor, Amam, and Shema, and Moladah, and Hazar Gaddah, and Heshmon, and Beth Pelet, and Hazar Shual, and Beersheba, and Biziothaiah, Baalah, and Iam, and Ezem, and Eltolad, and Kizel, and Hormah, and Ziklag, and Madmannah, and Sansannah, and Lebaoth, and Shillam, and Ain, and Rimmon, all the cities being 29, together with their settlements. In the Shephelah there were Eshtaol, and Zorah, and Ashna, and Zanoah, and Engannim, Tappuah, and Enam, Jarmuth, and Adullam, Soko, and Azekah, and Shearaim, and Adathaim, and Gedera, and Gederothaim, 14 cities and their settlements. Zenon, and Hadashah, and Migdalgad, and Dilian, and Mizpeh, and Joktheel, Lachish, and Bozkath, and Eglon, and Kebon, and Lahmam, and Kitlish, and Gederoth, Beth-dagon, and Naamah, and Makkedah, 16 cities and their settlements. Libnah, and Ether, and Ashan, and Iphta, and Ashna, and Nezib, and Keilah, and Agzib, and Mareshah, 9 cities and their settlements. Ekron and its dependent towns and its settlements. From Ekron westward all that is alongside Ashdod and their settlements. Ashdod, its dependent towns and its settlements. Gaza, its dependent towns and its settlements, down to the torrent valley of Egypt, and the great sea and the adjacent region. And in the mountainous region, Shamir, and Jatir, and Soko, and Dana, and Kiriath-Sanah, that is to say, Deber, and Anab, and Eshtemoh, and Anim, and Goshen, and Holon, and Gilo, 11 cities and their settlements. Arab, and Dumah, and Eshan, and Janam, and Beth-Tappuah, and Aphekah, and Humta, and Kiriath-Arba, that is to say, Hebron, and Zior, 9 cities and their settlements. Maon, Carmel, and Ziph, and Juttah, and Jezreel, and Jokdeam, and Zanoah, Cain, Gibeah, and Timnah, 10 cities and their settlements. Halhul, Beth-zur, and Gedor, and Mearath, and Beth-anath, and Eltekon, 6 cities and their settlements. Kiriath-baal, that is to say, Kiriath-jearim, and Rabbah, 2 cities and their settlements. In the wilderness, Beth-arabah, Middin, and Sekekah, and Nibshan, and the city of Salt, and En-gedi, 6 cities and their settlements. As for the Jebusites who were dwelling in Jerusalem, the sons of Judah were not able to drive them away, and the Jebusites continue dwelling with the sons of Judah in Jerusalem down to this day. Chapter 16. And the lot came out for the sons of Joseph from the Jordan at Jericho to the waters of Jericho eastward, the wilderness going up from Jericho into the mountainous region of Bethel. And it went out from Bethel belonging to Luz, and passed over to the boundary of the Archites at Ataroth. And it went down westward to the boundary of the Japhletites, as far as the boundary of lower Beth-horon and Gezer, and its termination proved to be at the sea. And the sons of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim, proceeded to take possession of land. And the boundary of the sons of Ephraim by their families came to be, yes, the boundary of their inheritance toward the east, came to be Ataroth-adar, as far as upper Beth-horon, and the boundary went out to the sea. Michmetheth was on the north, and the boundary went around eastward to Taanath-Shiloh, and passed over eastward to Janoah. And it went down from Janoah to Ataroth and Naarah, and reached to Jericho, and went out to the Jordan. From Tappuah the boundary moved on westward to the torrent valley of Cana, and its termination proved to be at the sea. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the sons of Ephraim by their families. And the sons of Ephraim had enclave cities in the midst of the inheritance of the sons of Manasseh, all the cities and their settlements. And they did not drive away the Canaanites who were dwelling in Gezer. And the Canaanites continued dwelling in among Ephraim down to this day, and came to be subject to slavish forced labor. Chapter 17. And the lot came to be for the tribe of Manasseh, because he was Joseph's firstborn, for Machir the firstborn of Manasseh, the father of Gilead, because he was one who proved to be a man of war, and Gilead and Bashan came to belong to him. And there came to be a lot for the sons of Manasseh who were left over according to their families, for the sons of Abiezer, and the sons of Helek, and the sons of Azriel, and the sons of Shechem, and the sons of Hepher, and the sons of Shemida. These were the sons of Manasseh the son of Joseph, the males according to their families. As for Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, he proved to have not sons, but daughters, and these were the names of his daughters, Mahlah and Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. So they presented themselves before Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the chieftains, saying, Jehovah it was who commanded Moses to give us an inheritance in the midst of our brothers. Accordingly, he gave them, at the order of Jehovah, an inheritance in the midst of the brothers of their father. And there were 10 allotments falling to Manasseh apart from the land of Gilead and Bashan, which were on the other side of the Jordan. For the daughters of Manasseh came into an inheritance in the midst of his sons, and the land of Gilead became the property of the sons of Manasseh who were left over. And the boundary of Manasseh came to be from Asher to Michmetheth, which is in front of Shechem, and the boundary moved to the right to the inhabitants of En-tappuah. The land of Tappuah became Manasseh's, but Tappuah at the boundary of Manasseh belonged to the sons of Ephraim. And the boundary went down to the torrent valley of Cana, southward to the torrent valley of these cities of Ephraim in the midst of the cities of Manasseh. And the boundary of Manasseh was on the north of the torrent valley, and its termination came to be at the sea. To the south it was Ephraim's, and to the north Manasseh's. And the sea came to be his boundary, and on the north they reached to Asher, and on the east to Issachar. And there came to belong to Manasseh and Issachar, and in Asher Bethshean, and its dependent towns, and Ibleam, and its dependent towns, and the inhabitants of Dor, and its dependent towns, and the inhabitants of Endor, and its dependent towns, and the inhabitants of Taanach, and its dependent towns, and the inhabitants of Megiddo, and its dependent towns, 3 of the heights. And the sons of Manasseh did not prove able to take possession of these cities, but the Canaanites persisted in dwelling in this land. And it turned out that when the sons of Israel had grown strong, they went putting the Canaanites at forced labor, and they did not dispossess them entirely. And the sons of Joseph proceeded to speak with Joshua, saying, Why is it that you have given me as an inheritance 1 lot and 1 allotment, whereas I am a numerous people, for the reason that Jehovah has blessed me until now? At this Joshua said to them, If you are a numerous people, go your way up to the forest, and you must cut it down for yourself there in the land of the Perizzites and the Rephaim. because the mountainous region of Ephraim has become too narrow for you." Then the sons of Joseph said, "The mountainous region is not enough for us, and there are war chariots with iron scythes among all the Canaanites dwelling in the land of the low plain, both those who are in Bethshean and its dependent towns, and those who are in the low plain of Jezreel." So Joshua said this to the house of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, "A numerous people you are, and great power is yours. You ought not to get one lot, but the mountainous region should become yours. Because it is a forest, you must cut it down, and it must become the termination point for you. For you should drive away the Canaanites, although they have war chariots with iron scythes, and they are strong." Chapter 18. Then all the assembly of the sons of Israel were congregated at Shiloh, and they proceeded to locate the tent of meeting there, as the land was now subdued before them. But there were still left among the sons of Israel those whose inheritance they had not apportioned out, namely 7 tribes. So Joshua said to the sons of Israel, "How long are you going to be delinquent about going in to take possession of the land that Jehovah the God of your forefathers has given you? Furnish for yourselves 3 men of each tribe, and let me send them out, that they may get up and walk about in the land and map it out in accord with their inheritance, and let them come to me. And they must apportion it among themselves into 7 shares. Judah will keep standing on his territory to the south, and the house of Joseph will keep standing on their territory to the north. As for you people, you will map out the land into 7 shares, and you must bring them here to me, and I must cast lots here for you before Jehovah our God. For the Levites have no share in among you, because the priesthood of Jehovah is their inheritance. And Gad and Reuben and the half-tribe of Manasseh have taken their inheritance on the side of the Jordan toward the east, which Moses the servant of Jehovah has given them." So the men got up that they might go, and Joshua proceeded to command those who were going to map out the land, saying, "Go and walk about in the land, and map it out, and return to me. And here's where I shall draw lots for you before Jehovah in Shiloh." With that the men went and passed through the land, and mapped it out by cities in 7 shares in a book. After that they came to Joshua at the camp in Shiloh, and Joshua went drawing lots for them in Shiloh before Jehovah. Thus Joshua there apportioned the land to the sons of Israel in their shares. Then the lot came up of the tribe of the sons of Benjamin by their families, and the territory of their lot went out between the sons of Judah and the sons of Joseph. And their boundary came to be at the northern corner from the Jordan, and the boundary went up to the slope of Jericho on the north, and went up on the mountain westward, and its termination proved to be at the wilderness of Bethaven. And the boundary passed over from there to Luz, at the southern slope of Luz, that is to say, Bethel. And the boundary went down to Ataroth Adar, upon the mountain that is on the south of lower Beth-horon. And the boundary was marked out, and went around at the western side to the south from the mountain that faces Beth-horon to the south. And its termination proved to be at Kiriath-Baal, that is to say, Kiriath-Jearim, a city of the sons of Judah. This is the western side. And the side to the south was from the extremity of Kiriath-Jearim, and the boundary went out westward, and went out to the spring of the waters of Nephtoah. And the boundary went down to the extremity of the mountain that faces the valley of the son of Hinnom, which is in the low plain of Rephaim to the north. And it went down to the valley of Hinnom, to the slope of the Jebusite on the south, and went down to Enrogel. And it was marked out northward, and went out to Enshemesh, and went out to Galiloth, which is in front of the ascent of Adummim, and it went down to the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuben. And it passed over to the northern slope in front of the Arabah, and went down to the Arabah. And the boundary passed over to the northern slope of Beth Hoglah, and the termination of it, the border, proved to be at the northern bay of the Salt Sea at the southern end of the Jordan. This was the southern boundary. And the Jordan served as its boundary on the eastern side. This was the inheritance of the sons of Benjamin by their families, by its boundaries all around. And the cities of the tribe of the sons of Benjamin by their families proved to be Jericho, and Beth Hoglah, and Emech-Keziz, and Beth Arabah, and Zemaraim, and Bethel, and Avim, and Perah, and Ophrah, and Kephar Ammoni, and Ophni, and Geba, 12 cities and their settlements, Gibeon, and Ramah, and Beeroth, and Mizpah, and Kephirah, and Mozah, and Rechem, and Irpeel, and Taralah, and Zelah, Ha'elef, and Jebusi, that is to say, Jerusalem, Gibeah, and Kiriath, 14 cities and their settlements. This was the inheritance of the sons of Benjamin by their families. Chapter 19. Then the second lot came out for Simeon, for the tribe of the sons of Simeon by their families, and their inheritance came to be in the midst of the inheritance of the sons of Judah. And they came to have in their inheritance Beersheba with Sheba, and Moladah, and Hazar-Shual, and Bela, and Ezem, and Eltolad, and Bethel, and Hormah, and Ziklag, and Beth-Marcaboth, and Hazar-Susa, and Beth-Lebaoth, and Sharuan, 13 cities and their settlements, Ain, Rimmon, and Ether, and Ashan, 4 cities and their settlements, and all the settlements that were all around these cities as far as Baalath-beer, Ramah of the south. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the sons of Simeon by their families. The inheritance of the sons of Simeon was out of the allotment of the sons of Judah, because the share of the sons of Judah proved to be too large for them. So the sons of Simeon got a possession in the midst of their inheritance. Next the third lot came up for the sons of Zebulun by their families, and the boundary of their inheritance came to be as far as Sarid. And their boundary went up westward also to Mariel, and reached to Dabbasheth, and reached to the torn valley that is in front of Jokneam. And it went back from Sarid eastward toward the rising of the sun to the border of Kisloth-Tabor, and went out to Dabarath, and went up to Japhiah. And from there it passed over eastward toward the sunrise to Gath-Hepher, to Eth-Kazin, and went out to Rimmon, and was marked out to Neah. And the boundary went around it on the north to Hanathon, and its terminations proved to be at the valley of Iftael, and Kaddath, and Nahalal, and Shimron, and Idalah, and Bethlehem, 12 cities and their settlements. This was the inheritance of the sons of Zebulun by their families. These were the cities and their settlements. It was for Issachar that the fourth lot came out, for the sons of Issachar by their families. And their boundary came to be to Jezreel, and Kesulloth, and Shunem, and Hapharaim, and Shihon, and Anahirath, and Rabbath, and Kishion, and Ebez, and Remath, and Engannim, and Enhaddah, and Bethpazzez. And the boundary reached to Tabor, and Shahazumah, and Bethshemesh, and the terminations of their border proved to be at the Jordan, 16 cities and their settlements. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the sons of Issachar by their families, the cities and their settlements. Then the fifth lot came out for the tribe of the sons of Asher by their families. And their boundary came to be Helkath, and Halai, and Beten, and Akshaph, and Elimelech, and Amad, and Mishal. And it reached westward to Carmel, and to Shihor-Libnath, and it went back toward the rising of the sun to Beth-Dagon, and reached to Zebulun and the valley of Iftael to the north, to Beth-Emek and Nail, and it went out to Cabul on the left, and to Ebron and Rehob and Hammon and Cana as far as populous Sidon. And the boundary went back to Ramah and as far as the fortified city of Tyre. And the boundary went back to Hosa, and its terminations came to be at the sea in the region of Akzib, and Ummah, and Aphek, and Rehob, 22 cities and their settlements. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the sons of Asher by their families. These were the cities and their settlements. It was for the sons of Naphtali that the sixth lot came out, for the sons of Naphtali by their families. And their boundary came to be from Heleph, from the big tree in Zaanannim, and Adamah-nekeb, and Jabneel as far as Lacham, and its terminations came to be at the Jordan. And the boundary went back westward to Aznoth-Tabor, and went out from there to Hukkok, and reached to Zebulun on the south, and to Asher it reached on the west, and to Judah at the Jordan toward the rising of the sun. And the fortified cities were Zittim, Zer, and Hamath, Rakkath, and Kinnereth, and Adamah, and Ramah, and Hazor, and Kedesh, and Edrei, and Anhazor, and Yiron, and Migdalel, Horem, and Beth-Anath, and Beth-Shemesh, 19 cities and their settlements. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the sons of Naphtali by their families, the cities and their settlements. It was for the tribe of the sons of Dan by their families that the seventh lot came out. And the border of their inheritance came to be Zorah, and Eshtaol, and Irshemesh, and Shahal-Aban, and Aijalon, and Ithlah, and Elon, and Timnah, and Ekron, and Eltekah, and Gibbethon, and Baalath, and Jehud, and Benaberak, and Gath-Rimmon, and Majarkan, and Rakan, with the border in front of Joppa. And the territory of the sons of Dan was too cramped for them. And the sons of Dan proceeded to go up and war against Leshem, and to capture it, and strike it with the edge of the sword. Then they took possession of it, and went dwelling in it, and they began to call Leshem Dan, according to the name of Dan their forefather. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the sons of Dan by their families. These were the cities and their settlements. Thus they finished dividing the land for a possession by its territories. Then the sons of Israel gave an inheritance to Joshua the son of Nun in their midst. At the order of Jehovah they gave him the city for which he asked, namely, Timnath-Serah, in the mountainous region of Ephraim, and he began to build up the city and dwell in it. These were the inheritances that Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the sons of Israel, distributed as a possession by lot in Shiloh before Jehovah, at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So they left off from apportioning the land. Chapter 20. Then Jehovah spoke to Joshua, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, Give for yourselves the cities of refuge of which I spoke to you by means of Moses, for the manslayer who fatally strikes a soul unintentionally without knowing it to flee there. And they must serve you as a refuge from the avenger of blood. And he must flee to one of these cities, and stand at the entrance of the gate of the city, and speak his words in the hearing of the older men of that city. And they must receive him into the city to themselves, and give him a place, and he must dwell with them. And in case the avenger of blood chases after him, then they should not surrender the manslayer into his hand. For it was without knowing it that he struck his fellow man fatally, and he was not hating him formerly. And he must dwell in that city until his standing before the assembly for judgment, until the death of the high priest, who happens to be in those days. It is then that the manslayer may return, and he must enter into his city and into his house, into the city from which he had fled. Accordingly they gave a sacred status to Kedesh in Galilee, in the mountainous region of Naphtali, and Shechem in the mountainous region of Ephraim, and Kiriath Arba, that is to say Hebron, in the mountainous region of Judah. And in the region of the Jordan at Jericho, toward the east, they gave Bezer in the wilderness on the tableland out of the tribe of Reuben, and Ramoth in Gilead out of the tribe of Gad, and Golan in Bashan out of the tribe of Manasseh. These became the cities appointed for all the sons of Israel, and for the alien resident who resides as an alien in their midst, for anyone to flee there who fatally strikes a soul unintentionally, that he may not die by the hand of the avenger of blood until his standing before the assembly. Chapter 21. The heads of the fathers of the Levites now approached Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the sons of Israel. And they proceeded to speak to them in Shiloh in the land of Canaan, saying, Jehovah by means of Moses commanded cities to be given us in which to dwell, together with their pasture grounds for our domestic animals. So the sons of Israel gave the Levites, at the order of Jehovah, these cities and their pasture grounds out of their inheritance. Then the lot came out for the families of the Kohathites, and 13 cities came to belong to the sons of Aaron the priest, of the Levites, by lot, out of the tribe of Judah, and out of the tribe of the Simeonites, and out of the tribe of Benjamin. And for the sons of Kohath that were left over, there were by lot 10 cities out of the families of the tribe of Ephraim, and out of the tribe of Dan, and out of the half-tribe of Manasseh. And for the sons of Gershon there were by lot 13 cities out of the families of the tribe of Issachar, and out of the tribe of Asher, and out of the tribe of Naphtali, and out of the half-tribe of Manasseh in Bashan. For the sons of Merari, by their families, there were 12 cities out of the tribe of Reuben, and out of the tribe of Gad, and out of the tribe of Zebulun. Thus the sons of Israel gave the Levites these cities and their pasture grounds by lot, just as Jehovah had commanded by means of Moses. So out of the tribe of the sons of Judah, and out of the tribe of the sons of Simeon, they gave these cities that were called by name, and they came to belong to the sons of Aaron out of the families of the Kohathites, of the sons of Levi, because the first lot became theirs. Thus they gave them Kiriath Arba, said Arba being the father of Anak, that is to say Hebron, in the mountainous region of Judah, and its pasture ground all around it. And the field of the city and its settlements they gave to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, as his possession. And to the sons of Aaron the priest they gave the city of refuge for the manslayer, namely Hebron and its pasture ground, also Libnah and its pasture ground, and Jotter and its pasture ground, and Eshtemoa and its pasture ground, and Holon and its pasture ground, and Deber and its pasture ground, and Ain and its pasture ground, and Juttah and its pasture ground, Beth-Shemesh and its pasture ground, 9 cities out of these 2 tribes. And out of the tribe of Benjamin, Gibeon and its pasture ground, Geba and its pasture ground, Anathoth and its pasture ground, and Almon and its pasture ground, 4 cities. All the cities of the sons of Aaron, the priests, were 13 cities and their pasture grounds. And for the families of the sons of Kohath, the Levites who were left over of the sons of Kohath, there came to be by their lot cities out of the tribe of Ephraim. Accordingly they gave them the city of refuge for the manslayer, namely Shechem, and its pasture ground in the mountainous region of Ephraim, and Gezer and its pasture ground, and Kibzaim and its pasture ground, and Beth-horon and its pasture ground, 4 cities. And from the tribe of Dan, Eltekeh and its pasture ground, Gibbethon and its pasture ground, Aijalon and its pasture ground, Gath-rimmon and its pasture ground, 4 cities. And from the half-tribe of Manasseh, Taanach and its pasture ground, and Gath-rimmon and its pasture ground, 2 cities. All the cities together with their pasture grounds that the families of the sons of Kohath who were left over had were 10. And for the sons of Gershon, of the families of the Levites, there was out of the half-tribe of Manasseh the city of refuge for the manslayer, namely Golan in Bashan and its pasture ground, and Beeshterah and its pasture ground, 2 cities. And out of the tribe of Issachar, Kishion and its pasture ground, Daberath and its pasture ground, Jarmuth and its pasture ground, En-gannim and its pasture ground, 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Asher, Mishal and its pasture ground, Abdon and its pasture ground, Helkath and its pasture ground, and Rehob and its pasture ground, 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Naphtali, the city of refuge for the manslayer, namely Kedesh in Galilee and its pasture ground, and Hamath-dor and its pasture ground, and Kartan and its pasture ground, 3 cities. All the cities of the Gershonites by their families were 13 cities and their pasture grounds. And the families of the sons of Merari, the Levites who were left over, had out of the tribe of Zebulun, Jokneam and its pasture ground, Karta and its pasture ground, Dimnah and its pasture ground, Nahalal and its pasture ground, 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Reuben, Bezer and its pasture ground, and Jahaz and its pasture ground, Kedemoth and its pasture ground, and Mephahath and its pasture ground, 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Gad, the city of refuge for the manslayer, namely Ramoth and Gilead and its pasture ground, and Mahanaim and its pasture ground, Heshbon and its pasture ground, Jazer and its pasture ground, all the cities being 4. All the cities that came to belong to the sons of Merari by their families who were left over from the families of the Levites were, as their lot, 12 cities. All the cities of the Levites in the midst of the possession of the sons of Israel were 48 cities, together with their pasture grounds. These cities came to be each a city together with its pasture ground all around it, thus as to all these cities. So Jehovah gave Israel all the land that he had sworn to give to their forefathers, and they proceeded to take possession of it and to dwell in it. Furthermore, Jehovah gave them rest all around, according to everything that he had sworn to their forefathers, and not one of all their enemies stood before them. All their enemies Jehovah gave into their hand. Not a promised field out of all the good promise that Jehovah had made to the house of Israel. It all came true. Chapter 22. At that time Joshua proceeded to call the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and to say to them, For your part, you have kept all that Moses the servant of Jehovah commanded you, and you were obedient to my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not left your brothers these many days down to this day, and you have kept the obligation of the commandment of Jehovah your God. And now Jehovah your God has given your brothers rest, just as he promised them. So now turn and go your way to your tents in the land of your possession, which Moses the servant of Jehovah gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Only be very careful to carry out the commandment and the law that Moses the servant of Jehovah commanded you, by loving Jehovah your God, and by walking in all his ways, and by keeping his commandments, and by cleaving to him, and by serving him with all your heart and with all your soul. With that Joshua blessed them, and sent them away that they might go to their tents. And to the half-tribe of Manasseh Moses had made a gift in Bashan, And to the other half of it, Joshua made a gift with their brothers on the side of the Jordan to the west. So too, when Joshua sent them away to their tents, he proceeded to bless them. And he went on to say to them, "Return to your tents with many riches, and with very much livestock, with silver and gold and copper and iron, and garments in very great quantity. Take your share of the spoil of your enemies, together with your brothers." After that the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned and went away from the other sons of Israel, from Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, so as to go to the land of Gilead, to the land of their possession, in which they had been settled at the order of Jehovah by means of Moses. When they came to the regions of the Jordan that were in the land of Canaan, then the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by the Jordan, an altar great in conspicuousness. Later on the other sons of Israel heard it said, "Look, the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh have built an altar on the frontier of the land of Canaan, in the regions of the Jordan on the side belonging to the sons of Israel." When the sons of Israel got to hear of it, the whole assembly of the sons of Israel were then congregated at Shiloh to go up for military action against them. Then the sons of Israel sent to the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and 10 chieftains with him, 1 chieftain of each paternal house of all the tribes of Israel. And they were each a head of the house of their fathers of the thousands of Israel. In time they came to the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead, and began to speak with them, saying, "This is what all the assembly of Jehovah have said. What is this act of unfaithfulness that you have perpetrated against the God of Israel in turning back today from following Jehovah by your building for yourselves an altar, that you may rebel today against Jehovah? Was the heir of Peor too small for us, from which we have not cleansed ourselves down to this day, although the plague came to be upon the assembly of Jehovah? And you would turn back today from following Jehovah, and it must occur that should you, for your part, rebel today against Jehovah, then tomorrow it will be against the entire assembly of Israel that he will be indignant. Now if it is indeed that the land of your possession is unclean, make your way across to the land of Jehovah's possession, where the tabernacle of Jehovah has resided, and get settled in our midst. And against Jehovah do not you rebel, and do not make us the ones to rebel by your building for yourselves an altar in addition to the altar of Jehovah our God. Was it not Achan the son of Zerah that perpetrated an act of unfaithfulness in the thing devoted to destruction? And was it not against all the assembly of Israel that there came indignation? And he was not the only man to expire in his error. At this the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh answered and spoke with the heads of the thousands of Israel. Divine One, God, Jehovah, Divine One, God, Jehovah, he is knowing, and Israel, he too will know. If it is in rebellion, and if it is in unfaithfulness against Jehovah, do not save us this day. If it was to build for ourselves an altar so as to turn back from following Jehovah, and if it was to offer up burnt offerings and grain offerings on it, and if it was to render up communion sacrifices on it, Jehovah himself will search out. Or if it was not rather out of anxious care for something else that we did this, saying, "In a future day your sons will say to our sons, what do you have to do with Jehovah the God of Israel? And there is a boundary that Jehovah has put between us and you, the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad, namely the Jordan. You have no share in Jehovah. And your sons will certainly make our sons desist from fearing Jehovah. Hence we said, let us take action in our behalf, please, by building the altar, not for burnt offering nor for sacrifice, but that it may be a witness between us and you, and our generations after us, that we shall render the service of Jehovah before him with our burnt offerings, and our sacrifices, and our communion sacrifices, that your sons may not say in a future day to our sons, you have no share in Jehovah. So we said, and it must occur that in case they should say that to us and to our generations in a future day, we must also say, see the representation of Jehovah's altar that our fathers made, not for burnt offering nor for sacrifice, but it is a witness between us and you. It is unthinkable on our part to rebel of our own accord against Jehovah and to turn back today from following Jehovah by building an altar for burnt offering, grain offering, and sacrifice besides the altar of Jehovah our God that is before his tabernacle. Now when Phinehas the priest and the chieftains of the assembly and the heads of the thousands of Israel who were with him heard the words that the sons of Reuben, and the sons of Gad, and the sons of Manasseh spoke, it came to be good in their eyes. So Phinehas the son of Eleazar the priest said to the sons of Reuben, and the sons of Gad, and the sons of Manasseh, today we do know that Jehovah is in our midst, because you have not perpetrated against Jehovah this act of unfaithfulness. Now you have delivered the sons of Israel out of the hand of Jehovah. With that Phinehas the son of Eleazar the priest, and the chieftains returned from the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad, in the land of Gilead, to the land of Canaan, to the other sons of Israel, and brought back word to them. And the word came to be good in the eyes of the sons of Israel, and the sons of Israel proceeded to bless God, and they did not talk of going up for army service against them, to ruin the land in which the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad were dwelling. And the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad began to name the altar, because it is a witness between us that Jehovah is the true God. Chapter 23. And it came about many days after Jehovah had given Israel rest from all their enemies all around, when Joshua was old and advanced in days, that Joshua proceeded to call all Israel, its older men, and its heads, and its judges, and its officers, and to say to them, as for me, I have grown old, I have advanced in days. And as for you, you have seen all that Jehovah your God did to all these nations on your account, because Jehovah your God was the one who was fighting for you. See, I assign to you by lot these nations that remain as an inheritance for your tribes, and all the nations that I cut off, from the Jordan to the great sea at the setting of the sun. And Jehovah your God was the one who kept pushing them away from before you, and he dispossessed them on your account, and you took possession of their land, just as Jehovah your God had promised you. And you must be very courageous, to keep and to do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, by never turning away from it to the right or to the left, by never going in among these nations, these that remain with you. And you must not mention the names of their gods, nor swear by them, neither must you serve them, nor bow down to them. But it is to Jehovah your God that you should cleave, just as you have done down to this day. And Jehovah will drive away great and mighty nations from before you. As for you, not a man has stood before you down to this day. Just one man of you will chase 1,000, because Jehovah your God is the one who is fighting for you, just as he has promised you. And you must be on constant guard for your souls by loving Jehovah your God. But if you should turn back at all, and you do cleave to what is left of these nations, these that remain with you, and you do form marriage alliances with them, and go in among them, and they among you, you should positively know that Jehovah your God will not continue to dispossess these nations on your account. And they must become to you as a trap, and as a snare, and as a scourge on your flanks, and as thorns in your eyes, until you have perished off this good ground that Jehovah your God has given you. Now look, I am going today in the way of all the earth, and you well know with all your hearts and with all your souls that not one word out of all the good words that Jehovah your God has spoken to you has failed. They have all come true for you. Not one word of them has failed. And it must occur that just as all the good word that Jehovah your God has spoken to you has come upon you, so Jehovah will bring upon you all the evil word until he has annihilated you from off this good ground that Jehovah your God has given you, because of your overstepping the covenant of Jehovah your God that he commanded you, and because you have gone and served other gods and bowed down to them. And Jehovah's anger will certainly blaze against you, and you will certainly perish in a hurry from off the good land that he has given you. Chapter 24. And Joshua proceeded to assemble all the tribes of Israel together at Shechem, and to call the older men of Israel, and its heads, and its judges, and its officers. And they went taking their stand before the true God. And Joshua went on to say to all the people, This is what Jehovah the God of Israel has said. It was on the other side of the river that your forefathers dwelt a long time ago, Terah, the father of Abraham and the father of Nahor, and they used to serve other gods. In time I took your forefather Abraham from the other side of the river, and had him walk through all the land of Canaan, and made his seed many. So I gave him Isaac. Then to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. Later to Esau I gave Mount Seir to take possession of it, and Jacob and his sons went down to Egypt. Later on I sent Moses and Aaron, and I went plaguing Egypt with what I did in its midst, and afterward I brought you out. When I was bringing your fathers out of Egypt, and you came to the sea, then the Egyptians went chasing after your fathers with war chariots and cavalrymen to the Red Sea. And they began to cry out to Jehovah. So he placed a darkness between you and the Egyptians, and brought the sea upon them, and covered them. And your eyes got to see what I did in Egypt, and you took up dwelling in the wilderness many days. Eventually I brought you to the land of the Amorites, who were dwelling on the other side of the Jordan, and they went fighting against you. At that I gave them into your hand, that you might take possession of their land, and I annihilated them from before you. Then Balak, the son of Zippor, the king of Moab, got up and went fighting against Israel. So he sent and summoned Balaam, the son of Beor, to call down evil upon you. And I did not want to listen to Balaam. Consequently he blessed you repeatedly. Thus I delivered you out of his hand. Then you went crossing the Jordan and came to Jericho. And the landowners of Jericho, the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Girgashites, the Hivites and the Jebusites began fighting against you. But I gave them into your hand. So I sent the feeling of dejection ahead of you, and it gradually drove them out before you, 2 kings of the Amorites, not with your sword, and not with your bow. Thus I gave you a land for which you had not toiled, and cities that you had not built, and you took up dwelling in them. Vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant are what you are eating. And now fear Jehovah, and serve him in faultlessness and in truth, and remove the gods that your forefathers served on the other side of the river and in Egypt, and serve Jehovah. Now if it is bad in your eyes to serve Jehovah, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether the gods that your forefathers who were on the other side of the river served, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are dwelling. But as for me and my household, we shall serve Jehovah." At this the people answered and said, "It is unthinkable on our part to leave Jehovah so as to serve other gods. For it is Jehovah our God who brought us and our fathers up out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slaves, and who performed these great signs before our eyes, and who kept guarding us in all the way in which we walked, and among all the peoples through the midst of whom we passed. And Jehovah proceeded to drive out all the peoples, even the Amorites dwelling in the land from before us. As for us too, we shall serve Jehovah, because he is our God." Then Joshua said to the people, "You are not able to serve Jehovah, for he is a holy God. He is a God exacting exclusive devotion. He will not pardon your revolting and your sins. In case you should leave Jehovah, and you do serve foreign gods, he also will certainly turn back and do you injury, and exterminate you after he has done you good." In turn the people said to Joshua, "No, but Jehovah we shall serve." At this Joshua said to the people, "You are witnesses against yourselves that you of your own accord have chosen Jehovah for yourselves to serve him." To this they said, "We are witnesses. And now remove the foreign gods that are among you, and incline your hearts to Jehovah the God of Israel." In turn the people said to Joshua, "Jehovah our God we shall serve, and to his voice we shall listen." And Joshua proceeded to conclude a covenant with the people on that day, and to constitute for them a regulation and judicial decision in Shechem. Then Joshua wrote these words in the book of God's law, and took a great stone, and set it up there under the massive tree that is by the sanctuary of Jehovah. And Joshua went on to say to all the people, "Look, this stone is what will serve as a witness against us, because it has itself heard all the sayings of Jehovah that he has spoken with us, and it must serve as a witness against you, that you may not deny your God." With that Joshua sent the people away, each one to his inheritance. And it came about that after these things Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of Jehovah, gradually died at the age of 110 years. So they buried him in the territory of his inheritance in Timnath-Serah, which is in the mountainous region of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. And Israel continued to serve Jehovah all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the older men who extended their days after Joshua, and who had known all the work of Jehovah that he did for Israel. And Joseph's bones, which the sons of Israel had brought up out of Egypt, they buried in Shechem, in the tract of the field that Jacob had acquired from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. And it came to belong to the sons of Joseph as an inheritance. Also Eleazar the son of Aaron died, so they buried him in the hill of Phinehas his son, which he had given him in the mountainous region of Ephraim.